to woman, you lift me up. I hope that I can do the same for you. You were there when no one else would. Take the burden away, that's how we do. Sister, I need you to walk with me on this journey. Yes, hold me accountable, cause sometimes I need to know the truth. Sister, I love you. We're one and the same, cause we're sharing the pain of the world as we know it to be.
Good evening. Welcome to the Woman to Woman Show, brought to you by the New You Nation Network, the network that nurtures you. Welcome tonight. Our topic is forgiveness, the F word that nobody wants to hear, forgiveness. And we ain't talking about the other F word. So tonight we are going to be talking about forgiveness. We have a very special guest, author, speaker, and forgiveness coach expert, Stephanie McNeil. We are excited about you guys being here tonight. Please, if this is your first time here, welcome. If you can share on Facebook, if you could share on YouTube, if you can leave comments, we would appreciate it. And please feel free to ask questions. We'll put them on the screen and you can jump in and ask whatever you want. So we are going to get started tonight. First, I'm going to invite my beauty flies to introduce themselves really quickly. We'll start with Shayla.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another wonderful evening of conversation. My name is Shayla Williams, owner-operator of Shay's Corner. Thank you for being here.
Theo.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Theodora Carter. I am the owner of T. Carter Coaching and Consulting.
Thank you, Sheila.
Good evening. My name is Sheila Isom. I am an insurance claims supervisor, and I am also an independent stylist for Color Street.
And we're going to have our guest, Stephanie McNeil, come in and introduce herself. Tell us what you do and where you're from.
Good evening. My name is Stephanie McNeil, and I am in sunny Clearwater, Florida, and I am a forgiveness coach.
Awesome. So let's get right to this, ladies. So what's the hardest part about forgiving? So anybody who wants to jump in first, y'all know I don't like to go in no specific order, but what has been, and we've all had to forgive somebody, all of us, each and every one of us. What is the hardest part of forgiving for you? So if anybody wants to jump in, just go right on ahead and unmute yourself.
I'll go. I'll say the hardest part for me was to coming to terms that I may never get an apology from this person. So I just needed to move on and just not expect one.
Oh, anybody else want to jump in on that?
It's having the ability to just let go. Sometimes it's just hard, especially if it hurts you to the core. You want to find a reason to keep harboring that feeling, whether it's anger or sadness or just pain, but being able to let go, which would lead to forgiveness.
Theo, you want to jump in on that, girl?
I think for me, it's probably a combination of both, right? It's the feeling like you never got the apology that you deserved. It's not being able to really let go. It's also feeling like, I guess in some cases, you're forgiving someone that, I don't know. I think you're forgiving someone that, and you feel like you absolve them of whatever they did when that's not really the case, but that's how it feels.
That's some good stuff. I'm going to say for me, it would be I always feel like people who we have to forgive without an apology, they lack that level of remorse that makes you feel like they didn't care about the way that they treated you. So why should I forgive you if you don't care about the way that you treated me? That feeling of I'm justified, right? You did do something to me and I'm justified in the fact that I don't have to forgive you because one, you don't have no remorse. Two, you done moved on and you felt like you didn't have the need to give me an apology. So I think that's the hardest part for me, is that most people, and I'm not going to say everybody, but most of the people in my life that I've had to forgive never gave me an apology, and they didn't seem remorseful, which was hurtful to me. So Steph, talk about the hardest part of forgiveness and how do you get over that hump?
Well, for me, one of the hardest parts was because when I began my forgiveness journey, because I call it a journey because it's not a one and done.
Mm.
Uh, when I found out what the definition of forgiveness is
Ooh.
and what you have to do for the offender, which is to offer them compassion, benevolence, and love, I had to close the book. I was like, what? Compassion? Benevolence? I could do the love part, but the compassion and the benevolence, I just had to close the book. So so that would involve like literally making the decision to forgive. And I would have to agree that once you do make that decision to do it, to absolutely let it go. So those were because I'm a really optimistic person, you know, and I remember you, Trey, talking about hope. You know how we women, we just hope, and we just hope it's gonna, you know, we're hope dealers, you know.
Yep.
And so just really making the decision to let it go and just and not pick it back up.
Oh, that part. That part. Don't pick it. Don't pick pick it back. That's the hardest part, because again, we talk about this. I think we talked about this a little while ago about the triggers before we came on. Like, to see the person. Shayla was just, sharing a little bit of her experience of actually seeing the person and not feeling jarred or, I hate him or whatever. So let's talk about, were you taught about forgiveness in your home growing up? Because we got to get to the root of where do you learn how to forgive if you've been in a home, right? And I'm sure that we've all had different experiences. We all grew up through different lenses, right? Some of us had two parents, some of us had one parent, some of us had a parent who was on drugs. So is it I ask you this question, Steph, is it a skill that you can obtain if you haven't learned it in your home growing up? And then we'll talk about how each of us were taught about forgiveness.
Yeah, I mean, forgiveness is a skill, right? So I say, I mean, we're not necessarily born naturally. I mean, you can see little kids, right? You do something to a little kid, they're going to want to do it right back to you. So our nature is to get revenge.
Oh, I'm leaving now. I'm going home already. I'm sorry. I'm already home.
It is in our nature to get revenge. And I say all the time, forgiveness is a daily conscious choice. We have to make a conscious choice to forgive. So when you say, did we grow up with it in our homes? Oh yeah, I went to church, and we're supposed to forgive, forgive others, forgive us our trespasses as we, I can't think of the scripture, but anyway, you know what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
But what I realized is that we do learn conflict resolution in our homes. And
so say that one more time. We
learn conflict resolution in our homes.
That was so good.
So I mean, I did have both my parents in my home, right? But it was very dysfunctional.
And we have a question: is forgiveness easier or the same if the person is gone out of your life versus still close to you, like family and etc.?
Well, I mean, it's the same type of process. Okay. If the person is gone, you can ignore it to a degree. But I also say all the time is that if you buried it, it's still alive.
Oh, I'm sorry. The forgiveness expert about to get on y'all nerves. I'm trying to tell y'all right now, just because the person ain't visible. Go ahead. Yeah. I'm sorry.
So, but if the person, you get to see them every day, right? You're reminded every single day if you haven't forgiven them. Because I mean, the litmus test. Let me locate. Because we have some Christians out there probably that say, "Oh yeah, I forgave everybody," right? But if that person walked in the room with you today and you looked at that person, what kind of reaction would you have? like Shayla was saying, she saw her offender and she felt nothing. Right. So that is a big indicator that Shayla has processed whatever offense she had against that person and she has let it go. Because this is the litmus test. If you no longer have negative thoughts, feelings, or actions towards the person, the place, or the thing, that means that's a very big indicator that you have forgiven them, you have let it go. But if that person comes into the room with you and you know, you have some kind of reaction emotionally, that is an indicator that you still got some work to do.
Ooh, wee. I told you she about to step on some toes out there. She said the Christians, oh Lord, let's talk about that. But let's talk about our home life. I'll go with you first, Sheila. What was it like in your home if somebody committed an offense? Like, and I don't mean, it doesn't have to be anything drastic. I mean, we've done things in our home where you hit your brother or your sister and your mother said, say sorry, and the other child was like, I don't want to say give him a hug. He hit me. So how was it like? What was it like in your home when it came to forgiveness? What lessons do you think you learned? You're muted.
It's also one of those things that's not spoken loudly in the home. It's just something that you're expected to do because you follow suit with everyone else. And if you're going to church, you hear the word of forgiveness, but you're not really taught how to apply it. For me, it's just something that I learned as I was growing up and getting older. Yeah, as a kid, you learn in the schoolyard to say, I'm sorry if I did this, or you expect it back, but is there any real meaning behind it? And it's not until I started getting older that I realized that you can't really apologize for something and expect people to forgive you and take it as genuine, and vice versa. So I can't really pinpoint when I learned it or how I learned it in the home. But I do have to just piggyback on a little something that Steph talked about, because a few weeks ago I had a conversation with a family member. And one of the things that I talked about was, you'll get to the point where, it has to start with you, and you'll get to the point where an individual that has hurt you, you're no longer affected by them when you're in the same room with them. And it's funny because I was able to relay those terms to that person, but hearing Steph just virtually say the same thing made me realize that it was almost like I'm hearing it for the first time, because I don't think I actually put that into application.
Oh, woo, you better practice what you preach.
Yes.
Oh, come on now. Hey, so we're gonna move on to Theo. What was it like in your home when it came to forgiveness? I want to just get all of our take on this, because the reason why I'm asking this question is because how have we been wired, right? Because we don't know we have a problem until we address the problem of either somebody taught me how to forgive, somebody talked about this in my house, and I'm always curious to know across the board, was anything about forgiveness talked about in your house, and how were offenses dealt with in your home growing up?
I'm with Sheila. I don't know that it was actually talked about in my home. I just think that as you grew up, right, things would happen in your home, whether it was with your siblings, your cousins, or whatever. Somebody did something to you, and you were expected to mend fences, right?
But was it quick? But was it quick?
I would say for the most part, probably with my cousins and my siblings, it was because we were kids, right? But I would say as I got older and out into the world, right? I don't know if the way I forgave was probably the best way to forgive, because I could literally, like, I could like kind of like dismiss you, like I could. I hate to say like kill you in my head. So like
Oh.
I could like sit in a room with you, say hello, but never not say anything else to you, right? And I don't know if that's really forgiveness, right?
Mm.
Um, you know, so I have evolved, thankfully, from that. But I would say, like, probably in my teenage years and early 20s, like I could literally be like, all right, fine, they did it, they didn't apologize. I'm done. I'm done with them,
They
right?
did to me.
I don't believe that that's forgiveness, but that's the way I dealt with it at that age. Now, you know, because we've evolved. I'm a coach. I've done therapy, right? I know that there is, you know, there's a whole process to that forgiveness, which really comes down to it a lot of times not really being about you, but being about the other person,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so you have to take that into account, and you know, also just recognizing that, you know, we look for closure from other people, and sometimes necessarily you can't get closure from other people. You have to be your own closure,
Wow.
or create your own closure.
Wow. I'm gonna flip it a little bit for Shayla and Regina. Welcome, Regina. We're glad to see you.
Thank you. Glad to
I'm
be
gonna
here.
flip it a little bit. Our other beauty flies in the building, Regina. If you don't, you know Regina, because Regina come up in here strong. I know she got something to say right now, but I'm gonna flip it a little bit on Shayla and Regina, and then I'm gonna go to Steph to give us some professional stuff. Let's talk about flipping it from what did you see with forgiveness in your home to what did you see with unforgiveness in your home? The offenses that went on and that you kind of sort of said, wait a minute, what's wrong with them? So Shayla, you want to hop in on that?
Um, hmm. I'm not sure that I've seen that in my home.
What did you
Um,
what did you see?
well, with my mom,
Okay.
um, I think, and as I grew older and became an adult and found out about a lot of the things that my mom went through, and just seeing her demeanor and how she treated people in general, whether they, and then coming to find out what some of these people did to her.
Well, speak about
um, huh?
I said speak about it.
Well, I can't.
Not the whole thing. I'm just saying that,
Well,
these people.
just really mistreated my mom. Just really mistreated her. Some people that claimed to be her friend that were really not. Um, it just really mistreated her
Right.
and took advantage of her kindness. But knowing that and seeing how my mom even treated these people and didn't really treat them badly or any, I cannot say that my mom really treated anybody less than kind, you know?
Wow.
So I guess that was an example in a way of her forgiving people. So as an adult, I don't think I've until I encountered some really serious offenses.
Right.
When people did whatever to me, I never really, it kind of went over my head, so to speak. Like I didn't really realize that they had done me wrong, if that makes sense,
Yes.
until, I lived a little longer and encountered more people and relationships and things like that, that I realized that, yeah, someone actually did me wrong. And, how do I react to that? I didn't really understand or know at that time. But like I said, as I dealt with more individuals and realized that, I was being wronged in certain situations and misunderstood or whatever the case may be, that, I was being done wrong, but I didn't get it. I don't know
Wow.
if that makes sense.
It does, but you know what I love that you said that your mother, you did see an example of turning the other cheek. And
Yeah,
these are just, subtle things that we see in the home of I know these people did this stuff to my mom, but she actually gave them grace and mercy, which
yeah,
was instilled in you. Even though you didn't know it as a young child and a young person, it was instilled in you, right? And in my family, I'll talk a little bit about that really quickly. In my family, lots of things were just swept under the rug. Like it was like if it was because it was domestic violence in my home with my mother and my stepfather. There were things that went on that were just, it was just domestic violence and drinking and drugs and alcohol and stuff like that. And the next day, my mother would wake up and serve him breakfast, right? So in my little mind, 12, 14-year-old mind, that's a level of what I think forgiveness looks like. Okay, he punched her in the eye and I guess it's not that serious because now she's up cooking eggs and bacon, you know what I'm saying? And it was just the messaging that I got from that was that you just let people do things to you and you just act like it didn't happen. You don't ask for an apology like, yo, you offended me. You know what I'm saying? So Steph, I see you nodding. Do you want to jump in on that? You're muted.
Yes, there was a lot of sweeping things under the rug too, in my household, and is like my father, he would blow up immediately and flee, you
Mm.
know. But then he'd come back home and then he would just sit in his little corner and, just basically be disengaged. But if people in the community, because we had a business and everything, when people in the community or somebody, one of his workers, somebody did something to him, he would take them back. He would forgive them. I don't care what they did to him.
Wow.
Right. And,
Wow.
and then on the other hand, my mother, she would hold everything in. Like
Mm.
things would anger her and she would hold them in. And I truly believe that that was one of the reasons for her high blood pressure, anxiety, and all that.
Oh,
So they didn't address things.
wow.
And so what happened with me when I became an adult, because I felt the same ways that my mother felt, but I was violent with mine.
Ooh. Hold that.
I would.
Hold that thought. Hold that thought, because we're gonna address a couple of things. Obtaining to unforgiveness, pertaining to unforgiveness. I'm gonna let you run the ball with that whole thing that you just talked about of just unforgiveness. I want you to talk about that a lot. So I want Regina to come in and talk a little bit about what you learned in the house when it comes to forgiveness. Regina, what was the messaging that you got growing up?
Um, I thought what I saw was levels. There were levels of forgiveness, or even, as I looked at the adults in my family versus the children, I think we were quicker to forgive because we were like, oh, that's just, we were have a fight maybe with my cousins or my sister, we'd have an argument, but then we get over it really quick. When I saw the issues with the adults in my home, whether it be my grandparents or my uncle or my mom or something like that, their conversations were way more, complicated. Their issues or their arguments or their situations seem way more complex than my cousins and my sister and I. And we looked at it from a child's perspective, like we got over what we went through. Why are they still uptight with each other? Why are they still mad? My grandmother was the one that I thought forgave. Like she showed me what that was. Um, she would have us say about it, and then she would let it go, and she would treat that person good.
Mm.
Whether it be my uncle or my grandfather, or maybe she had a disagreement with my mom when she came to see us when we lived with my grandparents for a little bit. But I saw that held the she kept the peace.
Right.
So as I got older, I wondered, was that really forgiveness,
Uh oh.
or was that her way of, keeping the family together, and just not arguing about it? Like she just said, I'm gonna let this one go.
Mm.
It's not worth me being right. I mean, I looked at how she moved, and looked like she would say, I'm right, he's wrong, whether it be my grandfather or my uncle, but I'm gonna let it go because it's not worth the extra confusion that it's going to cause to try to resolve the situation, because they're not going to see my way. So
Mm.
that's kind of what I saw in my grandmother, and I kind of took that on. Sometimes we pick up good habits, and sometimes we pick up things we need to relearn.
Oh, okay.
So I had to relearn some things because that wasn't okay. She deserved to be treated better than she was, but for the sake of the children and her grandchildren at that, she decided to let it go.
Whoa, Steph, I saw you writing.
Yeah, I just was talking, writing about the keeping the peace. A lot of times, you know, people would keep the peace, but they would be less than peaceful inside. So is that really peaceful? Is that really the best way to handle it? Because if keeping peace with you is gonna make me walk on eggshells, then what are we really doing? Like, we're not helping the situation.
Mm.
And I say, I mean, it's like one of the best things, the best gifts, and trust me, I still struggle with it because I'm kind of hot headed like my dad. Uh, But if we could teach our kids conflict resolution, if we could just model conflict resolution, that will solve a lot of relational problems. But the problem is, it's not being taught in schools, it's not being taught in our homes, and it's a huge opportunity that we can, because it's something that it's something that can be learned, right? Because in the just the reality of you being you, Trey, and me being me, there's opportunity for us to have a conflict, right?
And we
Because
did once, and we did. Remember?
yes, we did. Yes, we did. We modeled it great, right?
Mhm.
And because we practiced that, so I felt that it's strengthened our relationship.
It really
But the,
did.
but the problem is, it strengthened our trust in each other, right? And it was a good thing. But what happens is that because we are not taught healthy conflict resolution in our homes, because we didn't learn it, right? People are afraid of conflict. Um, it takes a lot of courage to resolve conflict. It takes the other V word, vulnerability, and vulnerability. People perceive it a lot as being weakness, as being a weakness. But really, it took a lot of courage and strength for me to come and say to you, Trey, you hurt me.
Hmm.
That hurt my
Yes,
feelings.
I remember. But and it took it strengthened our relationship because it was something that I wanted in me to have the strength and the courage to do with other people, that I kind of sort of fell back and to keep the peace, or to not hurt somebody's feelings, or not to be rejected. But for you to say, that hurt my feelings and I wanted to talk about it, it gave me a different perspective of, it didn't tear us apart. It brought us closer together, and it made me love you more because you're not a yes man. Like I don't want yes men in my life. I want somebody to come to me and say, you offended me, and not because when you don't, you are actually lying behind, you're actually lying. You're really not my friend because you're omitting pertinent information that has an effect on our relationship. And it just showed me how much of a forgiveness on a forgiveness journey you've been on, to actually confront a hard conversation. So I thank you for that. And it didn't go, the way either one of us thought it would go. It went great. And I was just like, when I got off the phone, I was like, oh, she stepped to me. That's my girl. Like, that's my people. She like, yo, listen, man, you hurt my feelings. I was like, oh, well, you know what? I didn't mean to, but she came and said to me, instead of harboring resentment or harboring animosity or harboring unforgiveness for me, you actually came and did me a service of loving on me and correcting me in a gentle way, which was amazing to me. So I thank you for that. And I love when we can share that story with other women. Like, we
Yeah.
ain't gonna fight and tear each other apart.
Yeah. Well, the first thing that I thought about is that I respected you, right? And I valued the relationship. And I did not want to see you every time and be like, oh, she did that to me. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I value peace. That is like my number one value. And in order for me to have, it's that's why I wrote down keeping peace. There's a difference between keeping peace and making peace.
Oh, come on, girl. Come on.
Yeah.
Forgiveness, mama.
So that's what we were doing. We were making peace with each other,
I
right?
love that.
If it be up to me, live at peace with all men. And so I did not want a break in our relationship. And so I had to be true to myself and humble myself and be vulnerable to say, you hurt me.
Lord have mercy. This is so good. So we're gonna go to the next question. Let's talk about forgiving ourselves for the things that we have allowed
Mm.
people to do. So I'm gonna throw it back to Sheila. How hard is it? And each of us can answer this question. How hard is it, or what's the struggle when it comes to unforgiveness for self forgiving yourself?
I think some of it has to do with getting back to realizing and admitting to yourself that you are vulnerable, that you could have been wrong in an instance. Those things that you need to be introspective about that you really don't want to face, that's pulling you back from forgiving yourself. Or it could actually be the reverse, that you think that you're actually better than that what you did was absolutely correct and you don't need to forgive yourself for any of your actions. So now that's when you talk about having that level of discernment. How do you open your eyes to see what role you may have played in that activity? Because at the end of the day, I think we all start kind of looking back and saying, well, mostly it was that person's fault, but did I actually do something? Like, as Urkel would say, did I do that? Sometimes you have to take it and look at that. So that's the part that I know that it's hard for me. It's kind of realizing, wait a minute. And sometimes, it may come days, weeks, months later, and you sit back and I'm like, oh, snap. I need to forgive myself for the role that I actually played in it.
Wow. Who want to jump in on that? Because I see y'all little fingers.
I'll jump in on that one.
Go ahead,
because one, I would say something that Steph said, I think that is important in the forgiveness of yourself, right? Is when she said she valued the relationship that the two of you had, that it made her want to, talk to you about it. I think we also have to value ourselves enough to forgive ourselves. That's one. The second thing is, my platform is healing is a choice, right? So I think forgiveness is also a choice, because that also lends to my journey. I can't talk for anybody else, but my journey of healing, right, is forgiving myself for things that I believed I allowed to happen to me, right? And so it's important that I forgive myself in order for me to continue to heal the way that I have decided I'm going to heal, right? And so just like I believe healing is a choice, I believe for me, forgiveness is also a choice. But I think one of the things that really stuck out to me is when Steph talked about just valuing the relationship that the two of you had. I think it's very important for us to value ourselves enough to recognize that we deserve forgiveness, not only from other people, but from ourselves.
Oh, come on now, ladies. Come on, Shayla. I saw Shayla over there itching. Come on, Shayla.
Okay. I used to blame myself for everything. Even when I was right, I was always saying, well, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? Until I came to the realization that if my Father in heaven will forgive me of my sins, why can't I forgive myself? Yes, I will always take accountability for the parts that I've played because of the fact that I was always blaming myself, even when I was right. So, but for me, I had to come to that place where I just had to accept the fact, like, God forgives me. He forgives all of us. So why am I doing his job and not forgiving myself? So I say used to because I'm still working on it, because I still find myself, looking back at any situation and thinking, well, what did I do? Did I do something wrong? And I know self-reflection is good, but I was just overboard with it. So I am, leveling myself off in recognizing that, okay, just, be rational about this. What part did you play? Did you do wrong? Did you ask for forgiveness of that person? Forgive yourself. And also it came from insecurity, because I dealt with insecurity for most of my life. So, yeah, I was insecure for most of my life. So I had to, come to that realization. And now I'm like, okay, I think I'm leveling off, where I'm taking, I'm balancing that whole situation.
I love it. If you just tuned in, you're tuned into the Woman to Woman show. We're here tonight with forgiveness coach Stephanie McNeil, and we're talking everything forgiveness. How do you forgive people who have offended you and didn't apologize? How do you forgive your parents? How do you forgive yourself for things that you allowed to happen? How do you forgive yourself for offending other people? And we're going to jump in with Regina. Come on in, Regina. How do you forgive yourself?
First, you have to own it.
Oh,
You have to own what you did or didn't do without the judgment, because the unforgiveness of yourself comes from feeling really bad about that situation or that experience. Once you have accepted the role you played, or accepted the fact that maybe you were vulnerable enough to allow something to happen that you, in a stronger space, would not have tolerated, you have to forgive yourself for being human and being in that experience. If it's relational regarding your family, your children, your spouse, your parents, your siblings, give yourself pause to understand the situation, understand that it did happen already, and that you continually not forgiving yourself doesn't change, heal, or make anything better.
oh,
So once I learned how to own my, whether it was an indiscretion or whether what I allowed, my one of the biggest, two biggest ones was with my children, when I had very open conversations about what I did as a mom, what I did or didn't do, and I really gave them the platform to have a conversation with how they felt
mm,
and own that conversation. And then it came to where, in my previous work experience, I had to forgive myself for allowing myself to be taken advantage of because I cared about what I did, and because I wasn't strong enough in my who I was and what I brought to the table, allow other people to take advantage of my gifts, my strengths, and my talents.
woo,
So I had to own that so that I don't walk into another situation and do the same thing.
wow. That's self
And
forgiveness.
that, yeah, that took time. And to Shayla's point, you still have to continually not look back, especially when you're in a little patch and you're like, oh, that's because of what I did. No, 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 no. That's over there. Like, don't bring that into where you are right now because it's stopping you from moving ahead. You already owned it. You've already had those conversations. You've already acknowledged it. They don't bother you anymore. So now is the time to say, what's happening now? What's going on in my space right now that's causing me to have these feelings, and deal with the present, because
Yes.
the past doesn't have a right to own the space you're in right now.
Wow. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you have your notepads out because we are talking about self forgiveness right now. And I think, like, for so many of us as women, we get into this space of, I deserve that, like, or I don't deserve better, or if I would have done this, or if I would have done that. And then we also get into the space of wanting to be accepted by people. So we take the blame for a lot of stuff. And then when we get to a place of understanding that maybe it wasn't my fault, we begin to say to ourselves, and I'm going to speak for myself, how stupid could I be? Instead of just forgiving myself and giving myself grace and mercy, I didn't know what I didn't know then, but I know now, so I know not to do that again. But most of the time, a lot of us will sit in the, how stupid could I be to have let this man, or how stupid could I have been to let these kids, or how dumb could I have been, or how weak could I have been, or how whatever could I have been to allow this to happen to me. So we have to let go of those feelings of how whatever that word is follows for us or for you. So Renee said, I don't blame myself. I just wonder why people always blame me because I try to keep the peace. Steph, you want to jump on that?
Can you read that again?
Yep. She says, I don't blame myself. I just wonder why people always blame me because I try to keep the peace.
Okay. Um, and this is in love, right? But what that sounds like is that you have taken on a victim mentality. Okay. When you say, I don't blame myself, but I wonder why people, it's like the why me type of situation. Um, because you said because I tried to keep the peace, and I talked about keeping the peace. Maybe you don't need to keep the peace. Maybe that person needs to be confronted in love.
Mm.
And so because let me tell you, I was a professional pity party. I was a professional victim. I was
Mm.
always, why me? Why they did this? They're always doing this when I should have uh, stood up for myself, right? When I should have held people accountable for their actions.
Mm.
You're doing nobody a service by keeping the peace in some circumstances. Now, I'm not talking about in a dangerous situation where you're being threatened, physically. However, just ask yourself the question: why are you keeping the peace?
Mm.
Is it serving the situation? Is it serving you? And is it serving the other person by them not being accountable?
Ooh.
I mean, that just reminds me of something, Trey, that you helped me to understand. I was mad at my former husband because I stayed with him.
Okay, let's go. Get it, get it, get it. Tell us truth and shame the devil.
And it's like, girl, that was on you. That was because you were not holding him accountable. So I can't be mad at him because of something that I had the power to make a choice. So I'm just asking you, my dear sister in love, do you need to have some, get some courage and make some decisions and calling some people to accountability?
Mm, 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 mm. Let's talk about holding grudges, right? Anybody ever held a grudge? And raise your hand if you ever held a grudge. And I know I have held a grudge. Does that come from? Do you feel like I want to know why you held a grudge? So I'll start with Sheila. Why did you hold a grudge?
Because I wanted to.
Oh,
No other reason than that, because I wanted to. And whether I think it just made me, allow myself to be put in a position where I felt that I was right. And that's it. There's no other reason why, because I know it does me no good to hold a grudge, but I could, so why not?
oh, I love it. I love the honesty. I love it. Theo, why did you hold the grudge? Come
No,
on, y'all.
I think Shirley just summed it up. I think one is because I could. Two is because it vindicated it. Well, I believed it vindicated me. Right,
Oh, uh-oh.
holding that grudge led me to believe that I had a reason for holding it. Right, but I think it really lets. I think Sheila summed it up. It was because I could. And
Oh,
but I think the real part of it is that you get some type of vindication from it.
uh-oh, Gina.
I held the grudge because that was where I thought I had power. Because while I was holding that grudge, I was self righteous. I was in the right. They were wrong. So I had a right to be ticked off, because that's the nicest word I could use right now. I had a right to be, you know, thoroughly dissatisfied with their behavior as long as I held the grudge.
Wow.
Um, it took me a minute to realize that they could give a flip less whether I held the grudge or not. But while I was holding it, right, I was like this,
You was
like
puffed up.
like
You was Puff Daddy.
you the problem, like you're the problem. But at the end of it all, it was like, no, they could care less about me holding a grudge or me having a problem, because they kept it pushing. But every time I looked at them, I was like, yeah, you did that. You wrong for that. You
I
should
love
you
it.
should know you wrong for that. And they were like,
Ooh,
yeah, whatever, bye boo. And I was like, well, what the fludge? Didn't know. I'm just saying. So yeah, it became a futile effort. It wasted my energy and space to hold it. But
mm.
but when I initially held it, I thought, yeah, you doggone right, I'm pissed. Yeah. Every time I look at you, you making me bad.
Oh,
You
I
know.
love it.
But yeah.
This is what I love about y'all, though. I love the conversation between us. And if you just tune in, you're tuning to Woman to Woman show. This is conversation for mature men and women. We are all women of a certain age. I believe we're all over 50. And this is just real talk to nurture your soul, to get you to a point where you can understand where sometimes we just hold a grudge because we feel like we justify. You did me wrong.
Right.
This is why I held grudges, because I'm justified. Yep, you did me wrong. So like you really did something to me, and I get to hold that over your head. And I'm glad that we're not sitting here sugarcoating it like, oh, I never held a grudge, or
No.
I'm a forgiving Christian. And this is why Christians are so pent up. A lot of them pretend. And I listened to an ebook today. I mean, an audio book today that talked about forgiveness, and it just so spot on got me. It got me for some unforgiveness that I was harboring, but I'll talk to Stephanie on the back end about that later. Because we talk sometimes for 2 or 3 hours on the phone. When we have a moment, we're like, girl, can you talk? Yeah, I could talk. But it got me straight on something that I really thought I had forgiven. And I had to some degree, but there was still something there. And when I heard this audio book of how it talked about being justified, that doesn't make it any better for me. Because I don't know how y'all feel. You can answer this question right now too, and then I'm gonna give Steph the mic for a couple of minutes. I want Stephanie to talk about this too. I know when I am in a mode of my righteous self, when I have put myself on a pedestal to be God, I have body aches. My lower back and my neck will tell me there is something that is inside of you that is not lining up with the word of God. And you need to check yourself. And sometimes it takes me a minute, I don't know what it is. But today, when I was reading that book and I thought about something that I was holding on to that I did not realize I was holding on to. And the book told me to do an exercise, and I did the exercise. And my body immediately felt healthy. Like I ain't even, and Steph, you could talk about, I'm not crazy. My body immediately felt a wave of relief. And I was like, I just feel like I smoked some weed. Not that I know how smoking weed feels now, because back in the day I smoked some weed, and I just felt like I felt like I had puffed on a blunt or something. And so I was like, oh, this a whole new kind of high. So Steph, you can talk about that for a second. I'll bring it back to
Yeah.
later.
When we hold unforgiveness, right, it activates the fight or flight system in our bodies.
Oh,
And what it does is that our body releases cortisol. And so when you hold unforgiveness, you're holding on to cortisol. That's the bad hormone in your body that causes belly fat, that cancer feeds off of. It causes all kinds of self-destructive things inside of your body. And as you were talking, I was thinking about one time, because God, we talked about this yesterday. Uh, God has to do something really dramatic in my life because I'm kind of stubborn, So what happened was, one time I was holding unforgiveness towards my former husband about something. And I told myself, I was like, okay, I'm just going to forgive him. I'm just going to forgive him. I'm just going to forgive him. And so I said out of my mouth, oh, I just forgive you. And so, no, I said, I'm going to get over it. I'm just going to get over it. That's what I said. I'm just going to get over it. I'm going to act like it never comes. I'm going to make peace. Right. So,
ooh.
and I wondered, like, I still felt tense. I still felt like tight and stuff like that. And so we were running errands this particular day, and he got out of the car, and I had this conversation with God. I was like, God, I said I was going to get over it. Why am I still feeling tense? He said, because you haven't forgiven him. So he got back in the car, and I said out of my mouth, I forgive you. And I said, I forgive you for this, this, and this. I felt a physical release in my body.
Yes.
Just like you did. And Trey, when you were talking about the pain in your lower back, if you look it up, that's where anger and rage is stored.
Woo! This why she the forgiveness coach, because when I was listening to this audio book today, that's what they were talking about, anger, that I had not said. And I'm gonna be transparent, because we on here, this is what we do. I have said for my breakup with Brian, and I don't know who listening, but so what? I love y'all, and this is what we do here. I have forgiven him, but I had never addressed the fact or said out loud that I was angry with him. Right? I said I was disappointed. I said I was hurt. I said I was, taking all the things that I said. I never ever until today when I was listening to that audiobook said out loud his name, and you pissed me the off.
Mm-hmm.
Not because he didn't want to be with me, but the way that he handled my heart. So I didn't even realize I was harboring still until today.
Yes.
And listening to this book that I want to have some, context to come on here. I said, oh my goodness. And I said it out loud, like, yo, and I just been saying to everybody, you know what? I'm not mad at him. My feelings are hurt. I was just disappointed. I was surprised. I just didn't, but actually I was really mad.
Yeah, because, it's unacceptable for women to be angry,
Right.
especially a Black woman. You can't be angry.
Right.
But we shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. So the fact that you brought the truth you brought the light to that situation, you got a physical relief in your body.
Yep. Also, and that's the one word I would not say. The one thing I would not address is that I was angry. It was more of, maybe it was just more of a defense mechanism for me to say that I was disappointed. And then while I was listening to this book, the guy was like, you need to write this letter, and I didn't write it, but I was just saying that loud. He said, you need to say that you're angry. He said, because the difference between, he didn't say the word secular people, but people who non-Christian people and Christian people he was a pastor too. He said the people who I minister to that come to my office that are not Christians, they come in their honest. I feel like I could kill this person and I hate them. And if I could do this, but a Christian will come in and say, I am feeling disappointed. And, I feel like he or they, but we won't dare say, I am enraged at what happened. And he said, that is why we have to, as Christians, really address the fact that it's okay to be angry. The Bible says anger is okay. It's what you do with the anger.
Yeah.
Not let the sun go down on your anger, but you are supposed to release it. So let me just go to Theo, because I see Theo just nodding. Come on, Theo. Theo, like, girl.
Because I've been there. Like, you know my situation, right? What did I say to you? I'm disappointed.
Yes, right.
People don't understand. Disappointment means more than, like, you convince yourself, right, that you're not angry. Because for some reason you're not supposed to be angry. But it's not till you really say that, you know what? I'm mad as hell, right? That you really can release yourself. But the other thing I was thinking about, and this is a question for all of you, is how do you feel about when people say you haven't really forgiven if you haven't forgotten what happened to you?
I feel like and the Bible says this, and this is why I'm big on this. And I think this is just one of the worst cliches: forgive, but don't forget. I believe for me, forgiving and forgetting is the best thing for me, because why do I want to live that offense over and 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 over again? I want to forget it daily. When it comes to my mind, I want to shift my thinking so that it'll go. God cast our transgressions in the sea of forgetfulness. And it's a Bible verse that says that he does it for him. Not for me, not for you. He does it for him. So I want to forget for me. And the longer I don't remember something, the better it is for me, because then those memories don't come flooding. So many times we hear the word forgive, girl. I'm gonna forgive, but I'm not gonna forget. Well, I feel sorry for you, because there's a lot of offenses that I don't remember that people have done to me. Like even me and Stephanie's story of us having a conversation, I can't even remember the full conversation. I love that we could talk about it, but we don't remember fully exactly what happened, because we said it before. We're like, well, what did? But we don't fully remember. She don't fully remember that you offended me in this way. In that moment, we supposed to forgive and forget for your own health and your own wellness.
Okay, there's one thing that I would add in that. Okay, because here's the thing. There are some things that are so egregious that there's no way you could ever forget them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I would never forget what happened in my marriage. I'll never forget that, right? But the thing about it is that I have acknowledged it.
Mm-hmm.
I have said, these things hurt me, and it was wrong. The things that went, stuff that I did to him, stuff that he did to me, it was wrong. I acknowledged it, right? And so in acknowledging it, I've let it go. And so I don't have the same anger that's associated with it. So there's a difference between forgetting, like, I'm just going to ignore it, because like I said earlier, if you buried it, it's still alive and it's going to manifest somewhere in your life, in your body, in your soul, somewhere, right? But the thing about it, when you let it go, you make it lose its power. It no longer has power over you. But if you just gloss over it, if you just keep peace with it, it's still an offense that's stuck there. That's why it says, don't let the sun go down on your wrath. I was listening to this guy, Andy Stanley. He says the reason why you don't let the sun go down on your wrath is that those devils go in the basement, and they go in the basement and they lift weights and they get stronger.
Wow.
And I thought that's a really good word picture,
Wow.
because they're in the basement getting stronger, and you think that, I'm just gonna gloss over it, right? I'm just gonna, but those, and that's how strongholds get formed. I believe that's my opinion.
Shayla, you
So
nodding. I'm sorry, Shayla, you was
Yeah,
nodding.
I agree. So certain aspects I will not forget because for me, I don't want to make the same mistake. So if there's certain aspects of the situation that I don't forget, then, I feel like, okay, good. It's present of mind. When I see it pop up again, I'm know to stay away from certain situations, certain peoples and circumstances. But again, with my mom and growing up that way, there's certain things in a way I feel like I was sort of sheltered from, events, people, circumstances, and what have you, because it took me a long time to figure out that, I was being, offended. So I think for me, I don't completely forget, but it doesn't affect me in the same way that it did when it was recent and fresh.
We got 3 minutes. We got 3 minutes, but we got to do a part two to this, because I really just believe when it comes to forgiveness, there's such a deep dive and so many layers to it, right? Like there's just so many layers to who to forgive, how to forgive, why to forgive, what happened, what was the offense, why is this happening? Because I know people in my family, right, and I'm sure all of us do know people in our family that have had a grudge and unforgiveness for 25. They don't even remember the offense. They just remember that they were offended. It's like, what are y'all mad at each other for? Like that was just 1972. Like we in 2022 and y'all still come to the cookout and she stay over here and you stay over there and y'all whispering and y'all whispering. It's one thing for me about families. It is time for us to stop hiding stuff under the rug and sweeping it under the rug and acting like it didn't happen. And it's time to have these hard conversations, because within the hard conversations is where the forgiveness lies. And like Stephanie said, I don't care how deep you bury it, until you kill that root, that thing is gonna spring up in your other relationships, in your children's life. Because now you done planted the root in them. And they're gonna plant the root in your grandbabies and in the people at their job. And it's just a ever growing root until we pluck that thing up and say, you know what, family, we're gonna sit down and have this talk. So we're gonna get to our final thoughts so we don't hold everybody here too long, and we'll go around the room. Regina, we'll start with you with your final thought on forgiveness.
I think forgiveness is a process. It depends on, the level of the offense, when it comes to you forgiving someone else or even forgiving yourself. As much as you deserve to forgive yourself, you think you have, until maybe that situation or the conversation comes up, and you'll know if you've really forgiven yourself or even the person or situation that you were offended by. So I always like to say, give yourself grace in the process of forgiveness, because depending on the type of experience or the level of hurt that it was, it may take a while. But let the minor things be minor, and holding grudges don't help or heal. So remember to give yourself grace. Everything isn't a 10. And be honest with yourself and develop some emotional intelligence so you can know how to grow in that process of forgiveness.
I love it. Sheila?
I'm actually going to turn it around a little bit because there's something a question that I've had from the very beginning. And so I'm going to ask Steph something because when you talked about the conflict that you and Trey had, one of the things that you said was that you had respect for Trey. And I just
Hmm.
want to know, does having respect for that other person impact whether or not you're able to forgive them?
Well, we didn't talk about this, but that was that case right there. Okay, I have had other situations in which I had no respect for the person, but what I do have respect for is myself,
Hmm.
and I know that our ability or inability to forgive someone is going to tie you to them.
Mm.
Wow.
You
Woo! Oops.
you think that I mean, my success, and this is something like all the people I hear that are coaches and all that, a lot of times when you hold unforgiveness, what happens is that it changes your identity.
Mm.
So you can't even show up as the person, the awesome, the greatness that is inside of you because you're using that energy in a way that is self-destructive.
My
Mm.
God.
So it's really not all the time about having, that was a reconciliation situation, right? But just the mere forgiveness part is for you to
Mm,
be free.
mm, 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 mm,
Thank you.
mm.
Thank you.
Woohoo, Sheila, you can still give us your final thought, boo. Come on. Y'all
Uh,
about to make me cry.
Look, my final thought is just, all about growth. Um, do I want to achieve personal growth? Do I want to achieve spiritual growth? Do I want to achieve internal growth? And recognizing what can hold me back from those goals of growing. If I want to evolve as a person, as a Christian, as a woman, mother, wife, friend, whatever, I know that I can't hold on to something that's worth forgiving.
Mm, mm,
Hmm.
mm, mm, mm. Theo, you muted.
For me, I truly believe it's a choice, but I also truly believe it's necessary for me because where I'm at a place in my life is seeking peace. And when you don't forgive and you hold on and you're harboring stuff, it affects your peace, right? And it does affect you being able to really walk and grow and live in your purpose,
Mm,
right? So I think it's important for me to just really be intentional um, about forgiving and because it's work.
yep.
It doesn't happen overnight, but it's being committed to doing the work to forgive because like Steph says, when you forgive, you then are able to really walk in the person who you were created to be.
Mm,
Because when you don't forgive, you are really not being the person that you are because you're walking around like you're this wonderful, beautiful person, but you're harboring all of this anger and hate in you,
mm.
right? So I think it's very important to be intentional for me, right, to really work at forgiving
Wow.
because it is really for you. It really does impact your mental, your spiritual, and your emotional being, and sometimes your physical.
Mm, 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 mm. Shayla?
I will agree with my sisters, and I will add that live your life, go through. Obviously, you will have to go through the process, but if you focus on living your life, and for me, I think in one of our first conversations, I talked about me shifting my focus to God and allowing Him to handle those situations because he would do a better job at, handling the people that um, uh, um, offended me, or the person that offended me, better than I ever could. So if I focus on him and doing what he needs me to do, then I think it would be a better process. So live your life, do what you have to do for yourself and better yourself, because Theo is right. It will affect you, I think, more physically than everything else, because I've watched like I said, I mentioned my mom, and she internalized a lot of those things. And unfortunately we lost her in 2012, but I do believe firmly that part of the reason was because she internalized a lot of those offenses. So yeah, live your life.
Thank you so much. And I'll say mine is, we have to be willing to forgive daily. Somebody is going to forever offend us. For the rest of our life, we're going to be offended. And I just think that we have to live in that, to know that somebody is going to offend us, whether it is a stranger. Unfortunately, forgiveness is required when it's somebody that we have given space in our heart to, that we trusted and allow them to be in our personal space. However, forgiveness is a daily process. And the more we forgive the little offenses, it strengthens our forgiveness muscle to begin to forgive the big offenses when they come. And another thing I want to say too is, get help. If you are harboring unforgiveness, it is killing you. You can reach out to Stephanie McNeil. She is a forgiveness coach. And I'm sure if it doesn't work with Steph's schedule, or if she thinks that you need therapy, she will be more than happy to give you more resources. But the number one thing here is, if you are harboring unforgiveness, it is killing you on a daily basis. It is killing your spirit. It is killing your personality. It is killing your purpose. It is killing your passion. If you have been stuck, I just ask you to probably reach out to Stephanie just for a 15-minute consultation to see if this is your issue, because there's a tribe of people that is waiting out there for you to let go of the animosity and the unforgiveness that you are harboring in your heart. And I'm going to give Steph the final word.
I'm gonna go like Trey be saying. I'm not gonna get all churchy. However, I was reading in Luke. I've just started to study like Jesus. I've never studied Jesus before, but I'm studying it in a way that I'm trying to like let the scripture speak to me. So the thing that I was reading in Luke the other day was, Jesus had chosen. He prayed all night and he chose the 12 disciples. And Judas was one of the ones that he chose. And he knew that Judas was going to betray him. Um, and it was necessary for his purpose.
Mm.
And it's like, I get so, I get my heart goes out to people that are so concerned about haters.
Oh.
You ain't got time to be worrying about haters. That's energy that you need for your purpose. Jesus, who was our example, chose a hater to be on his team.
Uh-oh. We about to go to church. Hallelujah. Amen.
And that just really struck me. It's like, whoa. Because I say that if you don't have no haters, you ain't doing nothing.
Oh, good night. Close the piano. Close your fingers in the piano. And sit your little self down. Stephanie, please tell everybody where they can find you.
Okay, they can find me at Free to Love on Instagram, or Stephanie Y. McNeil on Facebook, or Free to Love on Facebook as well. And I'd be happy to talk to someone. I'm not really taking any coaching clients right now, but I would be happy to have a conversation with you.
Tell them just about your book that's coming.
Oh, my book. Yes. It's coming soon. It's called Free to Love. Oh,
that Free other way. Love. Yeah, yep.
How forgiveness can heal you from broken pieces to masterpiece. Yes. And it's coming out. I launched it, right? And I had to forgive some people after my launch, okay? But it's going to be out to ship to you in January of 2022.
Is there, well, we'll post in the chat, and we'll post on Facebook and YouTube a link where they can pre-order it. And you just send me that and I'll post that. And we just want to say, the Beauty Flies and myself, we just want to say thank you to Stephanie for being
Thank you,
here.
Steph.
You were
Right.
amazing and awesome as usual. And I've learned so much from you on this journey about forgiveness. And we just are aligned in so many ways. And we always text each other like, oh my goodness, I posted that. Oh my goodness, girl, you in my head. So I love you. I love you, Shayla. I love you, Theo.
Thank
I love
you.
you, Sheila. I love you, Regina. I love you, everybody, for tuning in to the Woman to Woman show. We appreciate you. We want you to know that you allowing us to be in your space is a privilege, and we don't take that lightly. We will see you guys next week at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the Woman to Woman show on the New You Nation Network. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow, friend, and like each and every one of the Beauty Flies. Send us questions, DM us if you need some resources on forgiveness. We are here for you. If you need some nails, please contact Sheila. If you need some t-shirts, please contact Shayla. If you need some recipes, please contact Gina. If you need some harmony in your life, please contact Theo. And if you need some forgiveness, please contact Stephanie. And if you need some healing from infidelity, adultery, or trauma in your life, please contact me. We'll see you guys next week. We love you. Peace. Have a blessed rest of your week.